Hello again, Dan Alasso, Making History. It is day 32 of my retrenchment journey, and I've been thinking a little bit about kind of what comes after. And I'm going to begin by stipulating that for most Americans today, what I'm about to talk about is probably not the norm. Almost everybody that I know, from my wife to nearly all the people who live in my little northern Minnesota town, work regular hours. Many of them, though, also have second jobs or side hustles as well, though. And since COVID, there has apparently been kind of a growing sense of dissatisfaction represented, although it's probably overstated by alarmists in the media, represented by people opting out of just going back to work in the same types of situations that they had been in previously. So maybe this won't seem quite as strange as it might have a couple of years ago. So what I've been thinking about is that when I worked in high technology, there was a little bit of flexibility depending on the job. If I was a manager or if I was an inside, that is an over-the-phone sales rep, or if I was a systems engineer, then obviously I was in the office all day long. When I was an outside sales rep or a field rep, I made my own schedule, but I was typically seeing business clients during business hours. The big difference was that as an outside sales rep, I was judged almost entirely on my production of revenue, on the money that I generated, rather than on the amount of time that I had to put into achieving those results. Inside sales really was kind of the worst of both worlds, since you were only paid commissions on what you produced in most cases, but you were still under the thumb of management who could micromanage you, who could count the number of calls that you made, who could, in a lot of cases, listen to what you said, and could even hassle you for coming back a few minutes late from lunch. So, not a lot of fun. As a grad student, after I retired from high tech, I sort of considered myself to be self-employed. There were things that I had to do to get the A's in my classes, but I got to choose which classes to take, and I was typically overachieving, so I felt I had a lot of agency. As an assistant professor at Bemidji State over the past 6 years, I've similarly felt like I was pretty easily fulfilling the job requirements, and so I was pretty free to come up with ideas for new experimental courses, for example, or for initiatives like the open education work that I took on. But there were some requirements in the faculty job related to things that could be measured to document your performance and your professional development. There were minimum requirements, for example, for office hours. And there were course caps, that is, maximum capacities. Faculty was expected to be in their office, available for students to visit on a walk-in basis, as well as students who might make an appointment or meet you over Zoom. And courses were, of course, supposed to be as close to the cap, as fully enrolled as possible. Now, neither of these were really useful measures, in my opinion. They weren't really things that we could affect directly. Now, I generally went to my office pretty early every morning and spent way more than the required time in my office. It was a very comfortable space on campus. I had my view of the lake, I had my coffee maker. Students rarely visited, with or without appointments, but I got a lot of work done there. And although I used to have very attractive posters made, and I used to put them up all over campus announcing my electives, and especially announcing new courses that I had designed, I'm not really sure how much enrollment I gained from this. Although I gotta say, I suppose it was better than nothing, and there was really nobody else promoting courses on campus. And oddly, before the retrenchment last spring, there was beginning to be some talk about how the administration was going to try to start looking much more directly at tuition revenues and class enrollment numbers in determining whether or not BSU could afford instructors. The details are a bit blurry to me now, but I think the way it worked out was we were supposed to be able to pay our salaries with 2/3 of the tuition revenue that was represented by a student enrolled in one of our courses. Now, BSU tuition is $313.55 per credit before fees. So each student in a 3-credit course is worth about $900. 2/3 of that is about $600. Getting judged on something that you can't really control is a bit messed up, but that was their bright idea. I have 90 students this fall, which is kind of typical for a semester for me. So that 2/3 total on the tuition comes to about $54,000. Now, my salary for this semester is substantially lower than that, so I was apparently paying my way. Of course, the contract that has been agreed to and is enforced by our union doesn't allow for anything as crass as tying employment directly to revenue generation as if we were salespeople. I imagine the administration is a little bit frustrated by this impediment. I sure would be if I was a manager and I was responsible for aligning employment with financial contribution. It is a bit more complicated than that, of course. There are other valuable things that faculty do beyond filling seats with paying customers. But this whole process hasn't really been notable for its complexity and nuance. In any case, now that I've been retrenched, the situation for me is a little bit different. I don't think I'm working any less. If anything, I'm probably doing a little bit more now because I'm trying to use this countdown to remind myself that I need to solve this problem and find myself a job that will pay the bills after next May. It's interesting, though, that I'm thinking much more directly about the problem of creating value for people that they will be willing to pay for. When I think of courses, for example, I'm asking myself, what do I have in my portfolio that I can put into a format that I could offer it to people outside the university and they would find it interesting and useful and worth buying? I think there are some things that I teach, like my American environmental history, that are unusual enough that they might attract an audience, even if I wasn't offering 3 college credits in return for completing the course. Lacking the 3 credits, I think my price would have to be a bit lower than $900, but it might be doable. And I have a friend who has a consulting business where she consults and trains and works with regional and increasingly with national nonprofit institutions. And she suggested that I might want to try to offer services around something like helping academics prepare their research for publication, because I'm pretty good at that. And so I'm considering how that might work. I've also bounced around the idea in the past of creating a note-making and writing course. And maybe having it focused on an academic audience might differentiate it a bit from the things that are already out there. So ideas like this are going to take me some time to work out, and I'll obviously share that here. But it's interesting to me that almost all of them are pretty much the opposite of those old-fashioned jobs where you went to a place and you spent an amount of time there. Nothing but the result matters. But deciding when and how much to work and what types of work to do on them is entirely up to me. This used to, I suppose, be called entrepreneurship. I think it's becoming a new and kind of more generalized paradigm now. Or at least it will be if I can make it pay. And I'll let you know how that goes. But that's all for now. So I hope you found this a little bit interesting. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.